Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Living Room Studio. I am your man in Japan, Jay Contra, and I'm here because it's summertime in Japan, and that means soon I will be making my annual pilgrimage to Tokyo. Now, I often talk about how all of the deals are out in the countryside. You gotta be going to hard-offs. You need to go to those smaller shops that are outside of the big city, and that's where you find the deals. But it might surprise you when I say that you probably should be buying video games in Tokyo, and here's why. Well, actually, first I'd like to give a little bit of background. Tokyo is a phenomenal city. It has probably the single highest concentration of retro games of anywhere, period. I've been lucky to be able to go to some big cities, big world cities in my life, and none of them have the selection that even just Akihabara by itself. It is so crazy that you can go to this little, it's like what? Like 5 square miles. Not even that. Even just a square mile of land that has 6, 7, 8 of the best retro game shops in the world is absolutely phenomenal. The problem that Tokyo faces is that it has both internal and external collecting pressures, because you have a highly developed and, well, especially within the last, 7 to 10 years, Japanese domestic collecting has gone through its own boom. So you have that pressure, and then you have all the foreigners, like me, coming into the country, scooping up all the video games and taking them out. And so that's why I think the pressures facing Tokyo are particularly unique, and why you've seen Japanese prices skyrocketed the way that they have. Now, of course, there are still a lot of games where the Japanese version, even in Tokyo, is going to be significantly cheaper than its North American or European release. But still, it is something to keep in mind that this domestic and international growth has caused problems for the Tokyo market. But especially within, I want to say, the last 2 or 3 years, games, to me at least, seem to be more available in Tokyo. There was a couple years where everyone was panicking that you saw Super Potato, you saw these video game shops where the shelves had gone bare. And that was a problem 2 or 3 years ago. But I've noticed now that, I don't know, maybe they've just gotten more clever at covering it up, but I'm starting to see more rare games and just more games in general, because as the price increases, more people go into their attics, they go into their closets, they pull out these games and they just sell them because they know that video games are worth money now. But I want to get back to why you should be buying video games in Tokyo, and because of the concentration of games in Akihabara specifically, you don't have to spend a lot of time looking around for games. The problem is when you are looking for deals. When you go out to the suburbs, you are trading your time for money. For example, even in Tokyo, if you go into Akihabara, we're going to talk about a direct comparison between Akihabara and the hard-offs that you can easily get to by train in the greater Tokyo area. In Akihabara, a complete inbox Famicom goes for, I think, $200 plus, even today. If you go out to the suburbs, however, even in Tokyo, you're going to be finding those complete inbox Famicoms for about $60 to $70. The problem is that you don't know if you're going to find that particular console. It's always going to be up in the air because it's so cheap, everyone's going to want it. But if you go to Akihabara, you know that you're going to find at least 1, 2, or maybe even 3 stores that have that complete console. Yes, you're going to pay extra money for it, but you're also not going to have spent an hour and a half of going out to the boonies to find what you want. This also, I think, extends to rare games, and this is what I meant about availability. When you go out to a hard-off, even a book-off, you're not going to find very rare games there. Once in a while you might find something, but if you're looking for like a Saturn shooter, even like an uncommon Dreamcast game, especially the higher end Famicom and Super Famicom titles, you're not going to find those at hard-off. Maybe if you do, you'll find it off, it'll be a little bit of a lower price, but I've even noticed for the high-end games at hard-off, especially in Tokyo. Their prices really aren't going to be all that much better than what you'll find in Akihabara. So that's something I think to keep in mind. What I also wanted to say about hunting for video games in Tokyo is that at the specialty shops you will find places that will price based according to condition. Hard off, book off generally doesn't do this. What I mean is that when you go to Mandarake, when you pull out a game, you'll see that it's graded based on the case or the box, the manual, and the game itself, the CD or the cartridge or whatever. Because domestic collectors are so used to having long print runs for games, because of the secondary market prizing pristine games, domestic collectors are very particular about the quality of games that they buy. So you have a lot of, and this somewhat extends to international collectors, but local collectors, especially in Tokyo, what they're looking for are the high-end, high-grade games, and they will pay a premium for these titles. Me personally, I am used to going to GameStop and finding games that were treated like garbage by little kids, because that's the audience that GameStop catered to. So I'm used to finding cartridges that have names written on them. I'm used to finding games that don't even have manuals, don't even have the outer boxes. In Tokyo, those are treated as the trash that they are. And so when I go into a Mandarake or even into a trader or to friends and I find their B-graded games, even their C-graded games, I'm like, wow, this looks really great. I can't even tell. What's wrong with it? Like sometimes I look at these games, I'll look at it like a B-graded game, and I'll be like, nothing's wrong with this. I don't see anything. There's no tears, there's no creases, there's not even a little dent. Let me give you an example. I have a copy of Spriggan Powered, which is a phenomenal Nagsat shooter for the Super Famicom. This cartridge of Spriggan Powered normally goes for, I want to say, $70 to $80. I found it for $30 at Mandarake because it has just a little scratch. You can't even tell unless you shine it directly in light. This little scratch on the label. It got knocked. Not only did I bought that from Nakano Broadway, which not only has phenomenal cartridge prices, but it had an indicator. It had a little sticker on it saying that, oh, it had some damage. I couldn't even tell where it was until I took it home and actually played it. So if you can take advantage of the local, I guess you could say, the market forces in Japan, that you've got people going for those high-end, super, like, $1,000 plus, A+ copies of games. If you're okay with having a game that has a scratch or a dent on it, and I'm not even talking something that looks in bad condition, I mean just literally, a scratch on a game can reduce the price significantly. Buy a game without its spine cover. So many CD games are out there in Japan where you've got the obi, the spine cover, that in and of itself can increase the price of a game by anywhere from, for lower end titles it might just be $1, but for higher end super rare games it might be a $50 or $100 piece of paper. Now to some people that's going to be worth something. But if you want to save a little money, get the game without the spine cover and you will save massive amounts of money. So let's see, so overall we're talking about availability of games. We're talking about rare titles and even common systems. Yes, common systems are going to be cheaper out in the boonies, but again, you're going to have to pay time, and you're going to have to pay that train, the ticket cost to get out to those hard-offs. But on the flip side, yes, I'm saying you should buy video games in Akihabara and I think in, central Tokyo. But I think if you do have time, it's worth not only going out to the countryside to find those deals, but to also experience a different side of Japan. I remember there was one hard-off I went to. I went around to a bunch of hard-offs with my friend a couple years ago, and I had some of the best pizza I've ever had in Japan just because I was walking back from the train station, from the hard-off. We saw this pizza place, and it was phenomenal. Not that pizza in Japan is really that great, but this place was cool, and so you will just see so many cool things out in the countryside. And not even the countryside, but just out in the suburbs. You see so many cool different things that you don't see in the big city. But if you only have a couple days in Japan, No, you shouldn't be going out to the suburbs. You should be enjoying Harajuku, as crowded as it is, Shibuya, Shinjuku. You should be going to Kyoto. You shouldn't be wasting your time going to Hard Off when you only have a couple days in Japan. But again, I know all the stuff that I do now just because I've been able to live here for 7 years, almost going on 8 years now. But if it's your one trip to Japan, just go to Akihabara, spend a few extra bucks, get that rare game, maybe even spend a few extra bucks just so that you can get that nice fresh Sega Saturn. But that's my advice to you guys. I know summer's a big time for people coming to Japan. I will also be traveling very soon. I'll be reporting from Tokyo what I find, talking about what's going on with retro game collecting, particularly in Tokyo, as opposed to the suburbs. I'll have more details, more information about that in a future video. But for now, I've been your man in Japan, Jay Contra, saying thanks for watching, see you next time, and mahalo.